You found a map that you really like and you'd like to use it in your campaign, but it is a real world map, and so it's got real world locations on it, and you want to change those. In this video, I show just enough how to use Gimp to go through and repurpose a map for your campaign. Sometimes you want to repurpose a map. You see a map that you like and you'd like to use it in your campaign, but it's got text on it that doesn't fit. So you'd like to be able to come in and make some minor changes in the way the text displays. And so I thought I'd go through and show how to do a little bit with Gimp. I am not a Gimp expert, but I know how to do a few things with Gimp, and we'll show you that. So I'm going to open up a map that I found. It's of Lake Erie, the Lake Erie Basin. The green is in the basin. And say I wanted to take this and use it in one of my campaigns, but it says Lake Erie and Lake Ontario and Lake Huron. And this is sort of a problem because it won't fit with the way my world is working. So I want to remove that and maybe replace it with something else. So the first thing I'm going to do is that this is, I open up a JPEG. I found this. I'll put the link where I found the map, and I'll just show you. I always like to give credit, and don't say I'm stealing it because I'm not just going to use it for this demo here. So this is the map, but it's a JPEG, which is sort of important because JPEGs don't support transparency. So the first thing I'm going to do with this is I right-click on it, and I say, let's add an alpha channel. Now, an alpha channel means that when I delete it, it goes transparent. And you'll see why that's important in just a second. So I'm going to zoom in on the word Lake Erie. And if I really zoom in, you notice that it's fuzzy. This is an anti-aliased image. So this is going to be a problem with normal selection tools around this, and because the edges are fuzzy. So I want to be aware of that when I start doing some manipulation. So let's zoom in on Lake Erie again. So we see Lake Erie. Now Gimp has a fun little tool called the fuzzy selection tool, or the magic wand. So what happens is that you come down and you click on L, and it it picks the contiguous areas that are that color. Now if I hold the shift key down when I select, I can select more than one. If I don't hold the shift key down and I click the A, it switches from the L to the A. But I really want to select all of these at once, all the letters. So I hold the shift key down and I select the L and the A. The K is interesting because it doesn't detect that these are contiguous. So if I click here, that gets that part of the K, and I click here, it gets the rest of the K. So now E, E, R, I, E. So when I've selected the letters. Now, if I just cut them, let's just edit, and I cut them, it leaves a hole which is transparent, and if I select none, you notice that there's a fine little blue edge around there. So I'm going to undo that. Undo, select none, and undo the cut. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, I'm going to grow the selection. So I selected grow, and it pops up a dialog, and I want to grow the selection by 2 pixels. I'm being a bit aggressive, so it'll select it by 2 pixels, so that grows it. So now the selection covers a little bit larger area around there. Now when I edit and I cut it, it's gone. So there's no blue edges around that. So I've deleted Lake Erie. Okay. Now, this is the color picker tool. So I click here. And this will pick the tool, which is the foreground color, which is the light blue. So I come in here and I do layer, new layer. And this gives me my new layer dialog. And I want it the foreground color, which is that light blue. I click that. So now I got 2 layers, and the light blue is way up above. And I grab this and drag this down. Interesting little side note about this. I was trying to originally record this little tutorial using Cam Studio, and Cam Studio was doing something really strange with the cursor, and it wouldn't let me rearrange the layers in Gimp, which was sort of an odd little thing. Now if I select none, we see that the word Lake Erie is now gone. We could do that throughout the rest of it if we come back and put it back to 25%, and so we can see the entire thing. So this is the entire layer. So what we're going to do now is, let's say I want to, I've cleaned it up and I've added text. So if I want to put text on here, it's really simple. Let's pick a foreground color. We get our color picker here, and let's just make it black. We're going to put some black text on there, and we're going to say, give me, let's pick the Sans font, and let's make it, oh, well, 60 might be a little high. Well, not for this one. Let's make it 50 pixels high. We want to add aliasing. We want to, where we're going to put it here, we could do a whole bunch of stuff with text, but we're just going to put some lake here. So what happens is, now I come over here and I click and I type some lake. And that's fine, because that gives us the idea. And I'm just going to click here to, this is the move thing. So now I can move this. Oops, don't want to do that. Let's edit, undo, move layer. But now, because that's, so here's my lake. This is, I'm selected this layer here. So I can move this. In theory, I should be able to move this just now. No, Control Z. Anyway, but that's the selection. If I turn off these layers, I should be able to, no, it's not letting me move it. Anyway, that's what I said. I'm not an expert at Gimp, but it just shows you some of the features you can do. So I've got this text on top of here, and this is another layer. And if I come back into the text mode and I zoom back down in here, I can select the text, which gives here, and I know I can move some of these around and where it's at, and there's a whole bunch of options with regard to handling text and so on, but I'll leave that for somebody else to describe. You can see a whole bunch of tutorials about that, but this is just playing with this one. Now, what happens if I want to have a hex grid on top of this? Well, there's actually some interesting capabilities in Gimp, and I just found this out today. So I've got this whole thing here, and I could do something like, if this is multiple layers, and I could stomp this down. There's a way to put it down to a single layer, which would then merge everything. Because I could delete these, Lake Ontario and Lake Huron, but that's the same thing there. But let's just say I want to put a hex grid on top of it. And I found that Gimp had an interesting way to do that. And so you come over to Filters, and you go to Distort, and you go to Mosaic. And this pops up the Mosaic filter. And we want the hexagon primitive. Oh, actually, we cancel. Let's do, the first thing we got to do is we got to add a new layer. Let's add a new layer. And we're going to put a new layer, and let's say the layer, we want it white. We'll put a white layer. Why not? So it's just going to put a new layer, and it put it at the very top. Now we come into Filters, and we Distort, and we want to come into Mosaic. So this sort of shows what it looks like. So we want, this is the tile size. How big of a tile do you want? 40 pixels. So let's go with 80 pixel squares. And the tile height, you want to set it down to 1. Make sure it's 1. And the tile spacing down to 1. Because if it's up higher, you'll get into images and things like that. We want the tile height as 1. And we want the tile spacing. If we don't have the tile spacing, it's how thick the border is. We'll say that you may want the tile space, for right now we want the tile spacing as 1. And the neatness, if you don't, you'll get distorted hexagons. We want the neatness at 1. And the color variation is what so you can get different color hexes, and we really want that at 0. So that gives us the hex pattern here. So we can say, okay, great. So this takes a little while, even on my machine. So it's rendering the tiles, and it takes a second. You've seen that. So we've got this nice hex pattern. And if we turn off the other layers, which are these little eyes here, we see that it's purely black and white, which is fine. So we're just playing with this hex here. So now the interesting thing is we can select by color and just pick the inside of this hex, which gives us all of that. And then we can just do edit and cut that. So now that cut it and just left the background. And I'm going to edit or select. I'm going to invert the selection. So now I've just got what is the little hex grids. So now let's come over here. Now what I want to do is I want to change the foreground color. So let's make the foreground color yellow. And then we can come over and we can say edit and fill with foreground color. So that gives us that, and we say select none. So it gives us this little hex grid, and if I turn the layers on, this is what we see. We can now zoom in, and we've got a hex grid, which is fairly nice. So we've got a hex grid. Depending upon your map, you're going to want to play with the size of it, but we've got a hex grid which we could use in our gaming. We can go in and repurpose the maps, and then let's save as. So we're going to save this. First thing, we're going to save it as as an XCF, which is a Gimp image. So if I ever want to come back in and play with this, I can do that. I can save it. And the other thing, for a lot of purposes, you probably don't want a Gimp image unless you're using Gimp. You want to export it. So we're going to export it out, and we get the export. So this is, you export it out to, I'm exporting to PNG. You can do other things. And there's a whole bunch of tutorials on YouTube about exporting and all these features. But this is a very quick tutorial about taking a map that exists, deleting some text, adding some text, putting a hex grid on top of it. I mean, you know, this is the whole thing. You could delete the St. Clair and all this stuff and use this, but this would allow you to do some minor tweaks, taking an existing map and doing things with it. So that's why I call this is repurposing maps, or, you know, some people say it's stealing maps, but you're using it for your own nefarious purposes. If you, I'd like to hear what you've done, what you do with any of this. If any of you go out and actually take a map and repurpose it, and like to see what you've done, that would be interesting to do. If you like my video, press the thumbs up button. I'd appreciate that. Or if this interests you, you can always subscribe to my channel. There's a button right above. I look forward to hearing some comments. Tell me what you think about this, and I'll try and reply, and we can see if I'll do some more of these. Thank you.